Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline live, I suppose, but this is a recording. Thanks to FIFA and its schedules, we hope to return to our normal slot of 8:30 at some point soon, the football notwithstanding. The theme of today's program, Sri Lanka suffers growing authoritarianism and suppression. All the while Sri Lanka is experiencing its greatest ever black moment in terms of its economy and in terms of the lot of its people. And to discuss this and a little bit more, I've got with me a person very familiar with the workings of Parliament, but is not a member of Parliament. He is, he is, of course, the retired parliamentary administrator, if you like, Mr. Lacille De Silva. Very good evening to you, Lacille.
Good evening to you.
Now then, Sri Lanka is suffering a growing authoritarianism and suppression. But Sri Lanka has a written down constitution. Our constitution is written down. Article 4D, it's beautiful. The fundamental rights which are by the Constitution declared and recognized shall be respected, secured, and advanced by all the organs of government and shall not be abridged, restricted, or denied, save in the manner and to the extent provided. We have a written down Constitution. What do you say when I say to you that Sri Lanka suffers growing authoritarianism and suppression?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, why do we have a constitution? It sets out the powers, the framework, how the institution should operate, right? And the limits. Unfortunately, all that is not respected right now for the last couple of years because now we had a system in this country. They said, emergency laws, right? Haphazardly, they even tried on several instances to introduce emergency laws. Fortunately, we have a judiciary which is so strong that way, right? They said it can't be done that way. So thank God, finally, it is the judiciary that should decide on these circumstances. Biggest problem is we have a president since the 70s, under this constitution, who has been the powers, all the powers, has been consolidated in a single institution, the presidency, right? Which is totally wrong. Now, Walter Bagot says there are two functions, the efficiency functions and the ceremonial functions, right? Actually, efficiency functions mean regular, official, whatever duties as an executive, right? And those other ceremonial functions. Those two powers should not be brought under one. Right? In our case, we have done that. We have given so much of powers because on top of that, even immunity is a matter that should be reconsidered, right? He should not be given immunity. It's a...
I hear what you're saying, of
Yeah.
course, that's it. But I also want to say, this. We have a written down constitution. We have enough of rules and regulations and procedures and precedent to do whatever we need to. But we are still burdened by things like the PTA, there's a lot of concern about that. They promised us an alternative, the terrorist,
whatever.
The replacement of the PTA.
Yeah.
But there is something that really needs to be said. Sri Lanka has had 3 major events, and none of them have reached a natural legal conclusion. Number 1, in no particular order, but number 1, the bond scam. We still have no closure on that. One finance minister said something, this finance minister hasn't even mentioned it. But we wait. Number 2, in May, people came out of temple trees and attack the peaceful protesters. Where is justice? We await. Sri Lanka awaits. The peoples are awaiting. And lastly, but not least, I'm going backwards, May, the Easter Sunday bombings. A significant event. And our forces are still at it.
Yeah.
So many years later. The Cardinal has something to say about it. Harin Fernando has something to say about it. The JVP said something about it in Parliament. But where is closure? 255 people were killed unlawfully. Hundreds of families have had life-changing events happen after the Easter bombings. Why? Just because they were Christian and they were in an event that maybe to some is even bigger than Christmas? And they were in conversation with God.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And nobody seems to be in any hurry at all. And fraud and corruption. Tell me, Lacille, so when is the last time that a member of parliament was convicted for fraud or corruption?
Not even for murder, for that matter, because, you know...
There's somebody who's got some suspended sentence.
Yeah. So naturally, ultimately, the path was cleared even to go to parliament. So this is the sad state of affairs. Actually, I personally think this is a country, I mean, compared to what Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore had said, I just had written it down. He had said, I believe that Singaporeans understand that and support the fundamentals that have made Singapore what is today. The first fundamental is the rule of law. Actually, ours is a system, not rule of law. It's a rule of men. I mean, government of law. It's not a government of laws. It's a government of men, right? So naturally, this is the biggest problem in this country. Unfortunately, when Lee Kuan Yew came in 1959 here, right, he was so happy and he wanted to create a Ceylon there in Singapore. And that's how he started. Now, unfortunate situation here in this country, since the 70s, there is, for that matter, I would say, there is no respect for rule of law and there is no respect for constitution. It is arbitrary type of governance. Now, particularly it was Dahl had said, right? A politician, the most fundamental, persistent problem is to avoid authoritarianism, you know, that kind of arbitrarism, all that. So eventually what has really happened here in this country, because they do not follow the constitution.
So would you say that Sri Lanka is actually, it is not a growing sense of suppression?
Naturally, because...
Or do you think that we are headed towards the very slippery path known as totalitarianism?
Unfortunately, for a long period of time, you know, they have exercised power in that way. Now, in most of the... Now, for a very long period, they have had emergency laws in our country, right? With the emergency powers, all what they had done was, right, they had even suppressed and they had made maximum possible to push people into situations where they were not allowed to even protest, right? So naturally, what happened? I mean, ultimately, it came to a situation, even the Aragale was particularly because I feel too much of pressure and they have so much of problems and all that was not addressed. Day by day, things are becoming even worse. So naturally, it's a I would say autocratic, say that kind of rule where probably they have not given a patient hearing to being members of parliament, you know, who were elected in a democracy, right? This kind of tyranny should end.
So, how do we convey these to the people? In the sense, today, PAFRO, the organization that likes to see free and fair elections, is taking umbrage about the lack of elections being held. like the local government elections. We haven't got that. We haven't got the provincial council elections either.
They have given all kinds of excuses, right? I remember.
Are they good excuses?
No, not at all. Not at all, right? According to constitutions, elections need to be held periodically, maybe after 5 years or so. They have not had the elections, and this is a violation of the constitution. I remember now when Mrs. Bandaranaike.
Is that a very clear violation of the constitution?
Yeah, it's a very clear violation of the constitution,
So
right?
in your opinion,
Yeah.
We better be careful about this. So in your opinion, Mr. Lacille De Silva, do you feel that there is a real case, a potential case, for somebody to go up to the Supreme Court?
The biggest problem right now, they will come out with all kinds of stories, excuses.
Yeah.
Anyway, all what you need to do, now you said about corruption, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has become almost a cancer now, right? So eventually country is bankrupt owing to corruption, bad governance, mismanagement, all that, right? Now, corruption, you can't take cases of politicians to parliament for some reason or other. We respect the courts, judiciary. Unfortunate situation is the whole problem is, the entire state, it's called state capture. They have captured the whole thing, and going to Supreme Court or whatever at this moment with regard to this situation, I don't know. This is a matter that we need to be very careful, because there are other issues that we need to take up, right? Now, not only constitutional provisions, they have even violated with regard to, say, now about this Easter Sunday attacks, right? Even those matters have not been taken up. Why?
But I mean, the Easter bombing, if we just dwell on that at least for a moment, foreigners were also amongst the dead and injured. Now, today, we find ourselves at the mercy of any foreign government. We are asking them for assistance to help us with the crisis that we are having. How can our foreign ministry go and approach other governments, let's say the British government or whoever, whose nationals were killed unlawfully in this country, and there is no closure? We're not even apparently close to finishing the case.
No. Justice delayed, this justice denied, right? Even the foreign countries like UK, they have taken up our issues even in the House of Commons, right? So naturally they know what's happening here. I have no doubt nobody will help unless we put the house in order in this country, because there are a lot of things that needs to be done, maybe reforms with regard to economic, whatever reforms that is needed in order to get relief in this country for basically even the current problems we are facing. None of those reforms have been considered, and even in parliament, the biggest problem is ours is a parliament where
let's go for a quick break, Lacille, and come back. We'll see you on the other side of this short break, and a message for you from the network. We'll see you on the other side.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline. We are here with Mr. Lacille De Silva in our studios in Doss Street in Colombo. And apologies for the program being broadcast at different timings, but we are doing a bit of a juggling act. At least the program is going out, and it's of course available on social media. We'll be back to our normal slot soon as that final ball's kicked into the winning goalpost. Lacille De Silva, Sri Lanka is going towards this very slippery road of totalitarianism. That means we would end up being a country like North Korea, because that is totalitarianism. But there is a growing sense that the government in Sri Lanka of the day is suppressing the people, almost trying to frighten them into not going on. You know, I listened to this clip from Auntie Jean. Remember Auntie Jean? Mm-hmm. Now, Auntie Jean's saying all sorts of jolly things. And she's also saying, you better watch out, you know, because last time you got away with it, and next time I'm going to get you. I think what she's trying to do is to give one of these politicians a good cane. That's what I think. But I'm not encouraging the cane, but you know what I mean. But she's saying quite ordinary people are feeling fearful that they don't want to protest because they, like the two ladies from Panadura, you know, when the police said you can't walk around with your board on.
You know, this is totally, I think, incorrect, because there are instances where similar things have gone to court, Supreme Court, right? Now, Jana Gosha, then Pavidihanda, so many cases. We have the right to protest, and those are basically our rights, because now when you say,
but how do the people
Article 14
access those or exercise those rights when they are being threatened with arrests under the PPA?
So are you aware that some of those cases have already been filed in the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, they can't do all that. Now, we'll say Ranil Wickremesinghe and even Gota, right, took certain steps to impose curfew, right, or emergency laws. You know, it had been cancelled, or at least Supreme Court wanted to nullify all that, remove all that, right? So naturally, there's a situation, as long as this constitution is there, we have all the rights to continue with protests, and there are instances where it has been endorsed. Actually, the Supreme Court upheld, right? It's in order. Particularly because, you know, for a long period of time, people have suffered. Now, under the present circumstances, in the given situation, the biggest problem is people are going through all these problems without any malice. May I say it's all due to bad governance and corruption that has gone on for years. Yeah. And as you very correctly stated, none of those people have been taken to courts. Even in the cases that they had taken to courts.
Easter bombings, the temple trees exiting people who miraculously came out there and had poles, and they used these things against peaceful protesters.
Correct.
And now it's the peaceful protesters who are being arrested.
No, and even Ranil Wickremesinghe says it is not correct and he won't allow. Actually, good thing is, why did they protest? Similarly, how can Mahinda Rajapaksa, as the then Prime Minister, you know, brought people there? Eventually, they went out with all those, you know, all kinds of bars and all that, and they went and assaulted those peaceful Aragale boys. Naturally, it provocated them, right? And also in a democracy, right, there is a right for people to protest. Unfortunately, if they say it is not possible, right? Now, on the other hand, having provocated, I don't endorse what happened, but these people should be taken to task, and even President said that there's going to be an investigation or commission appointed, right? He should appoint for 2 commissions. One is this 9th July, if I remember right. Those provocations made, you know, having brought the people to our temple trees, right? The other thing is how they destroyed this country and ultimately made it bankrupt. That's another issue they should go into. And without going into those issues, how can they, you know, penalize the people who are out on the roads protesting against the government, because it is the government that had faulted, right? So it is the duty in a democratic country to at least respect, and they don't respect because they fear. And I remember these people, the parliamentarians, right? They use pressure. I think they are really not able to understand all what it says in the Constitution, especially people like Sanat Nisant, then like Johnston and all of them. So naturally, all what they have done should also be investigated, because it is all that they said in Parliament, right? It is irrelevant, it is totally unfair, they can't do that. And on that basis, all what I say, as you very correctly stated, right, all that had gone unnoticed. But they are trying to deal with the innocent public who had to come out in, against the government to raise their sort of voice. So naturally, it's a right that they can do, and they should do that. They should continue to do that.
And how does one communicate to the people that honestly you need to think once, twice, and a third time as well before casting your vote? Because once, as you can see with the procrastination that's going on about having elections, you can see that once you give them your vote, then, boy, isn't it difficult to get them to deliver?
Yeah, this is a very good question. You know what happened in 77, right? Jayawardena wanted 2/3 and he got 5/6. So it was too much of power. Even this time, eventually people voted overwhelmingly. So you should never give any government too much of power. It is always better, balanced, because you can always have a minority government always, right? So the biggest problem in this country, people also should be cautious. At the same time, even the rulers must be very careful now, because they think they can do anything and escape. No.
So are you saying that leaders in Sri Lanka are not invincible?
Actually, you can't call them leaders now. We have, in terms of,
So what are they then?
I think a set of, do they, are they leading the country? They are misusing authority, they are abusing powers, they are robbing the people, all that.
I'm trying to think of a collective term for them then. Shall we, what do we call them?
A set of hooligans, I believe.
A set of hooligans.
Is it?
Well, not everybody is bad, but...
Not everybody is bad, they are large majority.
Why can't we, members of the public, go to Parliament, and first of all we'll have to get through the blessed gates and then talk to the librarian or whoever. Why can't I get the asset declarations of any member of Parliament? And I know I can get it, but why can't I bring it here and discuss it openly with you?
Actually, under Article 14, right,
Yeah.
A, under the 19th Amendment, right to information is, it's a privilege, it's a right. Now, we were the last country in Asia also, now in 2000. We need somebody like, I think if I remember right, she's Professor Ran, I forget the name, right?
Yes.
And she, the lady who did all that, eventually, she fought for the rights of the poor people. And she said, all due to mismanagement and corruption,
Yeah.
right? This country needs information, right to information enacted. So it was basically in 2005, they enacted the right to information. And there, they have the right to call for all that. At the same time, even the judiciary, to that extent, is so much, they have a lot of powers, independent, I would say. Article 50, which says, unlike in our country, now even in our country, Article 105 specifically says, that protect, vindicate, and enforce judiciary, subject to the provisions of the Constitution, the institutions for the administration of justice which protect, vindicate, and enforce the rights of the people shall be Supreme Court, all that, right? So our problem is...
Vindicate, and?
Enforce.
Enforce. Okay.
Enforce, right? So there is a lot of powers even with the judiciary constitutionally, right? But unfortunate situation is they have, as I said, captured the entire public sector, including the judiciary. So these things need to be changed in the first place if you really want to take the country forward, right? And if you want to, sort out this mess, I suppose, in that way. Because, like what I said, justice delayed is justice denied in this country. The biggest problem is, it's, as I said, it's, what it is, government of laws. It's not a government of laws, it's a government of men.
But it appears that these people, once elected, are acting pro bono themselves, for and on behalf of themselves.
Yeah, because
not on behalf of the people.
Yeah, they don't understand. It's a social contract, you know. It's a social contract. Now, see, being a social contract, they are duty bound to serve the electors, right? They are not serving the electors; they are serving themselves, which is a very serious situation, and that is the very reason even we have to consider the system change, because then in that case, now see, we know, I just wrote it down because now Australia, Malcolm Turnbull was dealt with for not wearing seat belt, you know, in his own whatever. 1976, Japanese PM Tanaka Kakui, Lockheed, he got a commission and he was dealt with, and ultimately, right? 1980, PM Takeshita Noboru forced to resign, and now here in this country, now Kapila Chandrasena, CEO, Sri Lankan, right? He had accepted a bribe of $2,000 million.
And
right?
it was proven in a British court.
It was proven in a British court, right? So naturally, such cases also have not been gone into and punished. So this is the very sad state of affairs in our country, and I think people must understand all this, right? It is very important that they should take up all these, as you said correctly, during the next elections, right? They must be very cautious. And also, the biggest problem in this country, the party leaders, they nominate all the corrupt people, unlike in other countries, right? When you appoint corrupt people again and again, you know, for the next couple of elections also, situation could even become worse, you know, could become worse.
Lacille De Silva, it's been wonderful having you on Newsline, as we much enjoy having you. Always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline. Do follow us. We are available on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. Take care. And as always, God bless you all.